Hello and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm talking about finding the future, and I'm taking you through the interesting attraction Spaceship Earth at Epcot Center. You can actually see here I'm just shooting some still footage and also taking some GoPro video on my exit through the ride. And for me, Spaceship Earth is one of the premier attractions at Epcot's Future World because it gives us this vision of indeed what the future might be like. And as you can see here, and you'll see later in the ride, a lot of this future, of course, is focused on technology. And in some ways common with the World Exposition tradition, we see here at Epcot and specifically Future World an emphasis on this idea of pretending or projecting what the future might look like. So let me take you for a tour of this attraction at Epcot. And for me, in looking over some of my imagery here and also videos from Spaceship Earth, this first image I think is very, very iconic. You have the early humans here creating cave art on the wall, and then just above them in this mural you have astronauts. So this interesting parallel, and they mentioned in the narration, and I'll play some of that for you with the video, that we've traveled 30,000 years, and at the end this very optimistic message about where we're headed in the future. Much like the land, the political content, and I'll just look at some of the video here, the political content of the ride is pretty muted. Not a lot of mention of concerns that we might have about the human effect on the environment, and it's a primarily positive message of the future that we get, and certainly that's something that the World Expo has held in common with Epcot Center, which is this idea of focusing on the optimism of the future and perhaps a vision forward. Now here's a curious point in the ride, and this has certainly changed over the years. And I've always enjoyed this ride because I think it's one of those slow-moving, reflective type of rides that I've always appreciated at Disney, that we see less and less of because of the emphasis on thrill rides in so many theme parks. But so what happens at the end of the ride is, earlier you had your photo taken, and at the end of the ride they ask you a series of questions, as you can see on the screen here, and then based on that they construct the future that is closest to your choices that you've selected. And basically it is, I guess my point about this is it's a rather comical version of this, and a lot of this I've noticed, and I've done this in the past too. I'll check some of my old footage. I believe it was very, very similar, and I'll give you some blow-ups here, but basically depending on if there's one or two persons in your car, you get your images superimposed on top of the cartoon characters, and it's very Jetsons-like. So what's curious about this, just based on these images, is that I think over time, if you look at changes in Disney's Tomorrowland, and if you also look at changes throughout Epcot, the Future World section of Epcot, which is the the futuristic, forward-looking section of Epcot, as opposed to the World Showcase with all the cultural pavilions, I think they've toned down this notion of prediction, the utopian vision, a bit over time. As Disney, after the death of Walt Disney, as Disney began to move away from Walt's original vision of the experimental prototypical community of tomorrow, and we get more of just a theme park that has some future elements in it in terms of Epcot, I think you note then that they're toning down any sort of predictive measure or predictive version that they might be offering to the guest in terms of what the future might look like. Getting a little bit of that in the World Expo tradition as well. Certainly I saw that in Milan in this last Expo in 2015. But still, with some of the more micro technologies and smaller projects, they are trying to suggest a project of the future, and maybe not giving that up as much as we see Epcot giving that up. So it's something to reflect on, I think, here as we look at some aspects of Spaceship Earth. Okay, and we're looking here again at the outside of the famous geodesic dome, which I think symbolically does capture that essence of what maybe the future entails. We get that certainly from many of the futuristic buildings we see in the World's Exposition tradition. I mentioned then in my previous video that there's a specific vision of the future that we see here, and again I keep coming back to this image because I think it says a lot about what Spaceship Earth as an attraction tries to determine for us in terms of our evolution from early humans into space beings. So I'll take you through the attraction now and let you hear some of the audio as I captured it during my ride throughout Spaceship Earth.
Safety, remove seatbelt with your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle, and please watch your children.
During your slow-moving journey, your time machine will slowly rotate backwards and may stop momentarily. For your safety, remain seated at all times.
This is Spaceship Earth Control. On behalf of Steve and Mark, welcome aboard. On the map in front of you, please show us where you're from, while we input your time travel coordinates. And now locate the monitor overhead to the right. Make sure your face is clearly visible and wait for the flash. Good. Sending photo to the future.
So as you can see, one of the things they do here in the ride vehicle is they try to personalize the experience, and this will come back as a thematic at the end of the ride when they talk about what the future will look like in a rather, you might say, whimsical sense. And the other thing you'll notice, of course, is this narrative of time travel that they use to discuss this moving back in time and then progressing through to the future throughout the course of this ride at Epcot's Spaceship Earth. So we'll continue here with some of the ride here. We're getting into some of the audio animatronic sections of the ride. I'm going to try to take the brightness up a bit on the video because when I shot this I didn't have a very good low light setting, so I do apologize for that in terms of the challenge of seeing some of the footage here coming up.
Here, in this hostile world, is where our story begins. We are alone, struggling to survive, until we learn to communicate with one another. Now we can hunt as a team and survive together. It takes 15,000 years to come up with the next fight out. Recording our knowledge on cave walls. There was only one small problem. When we moved, the recorded knowledge stayed behind. Now let's move ahead to ancient Egypt, because something is about to happen here that will change the future forever. This unknown Egyptian pounding reeds flat is inventing papyrus, a sort of paper. Papyrus in turn creates better record keeping, plans, designs, and unfortunately taxes. But it also brings with it the dawn of great civilizations. At this point, each civilization has its own form of writing, which none of the others can understand. But the Phoenicians, who trade with all of them, have a solution. They create a simple common alphabet, adaptable to most languages. Remember how easy it was to learn your ABCs? Like the Phoenicians, they invented them. Wide Web, and it's leading us into the future. But then we hit a roadblock. Rome falls, and the great library of Alexandria in Egypt is burned. Much of our learning is destroyed, lost forever. Or so we think. It turns out there are copies of some of these books in the libraries of the Middle East, watched over by Arab and Jewish scholars. The first century sisters. The books are sacred, and with them our dreams of the future. In the meantime, here in Europe, monks toil endlessly recording books by hand. But that is about to change. In 1450, Gutenberg invents the movable type printing press. Now knowledge can travel as fast as these new books, and travel they do. Books make it easier to invent the future in every field, and the result is an incredible explosion of innovation we call the Renaissance.
So I think one of the things that I've often found to be challenging about this ride is just the emphasis on the types of technologies that are chosen here to suggest our evolution, as well as the lack of awareness maybe of some of the other cultures out there that, besides Western cultures, that contributed to the evolution that they're discussing. And that shows you, I think, the selective nature of time travel and thinking about the future as well as the past in terms of a ride like this. Let's take a look then at a few more of the spaces that we travel through here on our ride vehicles.
By now, we're all communicating from anywhere on Earth, and in 1969, from somewhere else.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
To send a man to the moon, we had to invent a new language, spoken not by man, but by computers. At first very large, very expensive computers, but we see the potential. What if everyone could have one of these amazing machines in their own house? There's just one problem. There is big enough. The solution comes in of all places and around in California. Young people Together we form a super network that glows with billions of interactions. And once again, we stand on the brink of a new renaissance. After 30,000 years of time travel, here we are, a truly global community, poised to shape the future of this, our spaceship Earth.
Okay, so in this next section, I did cut out the audio. It turned out that it did match some third-party content, and even though I could leave that up on YouTube, it was going to be monetized, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I took the audio out in this section, but you can see some of the video imagery. Again, we're coming to the end of the ride, and so this is the section where we're going to be seeing our personalization of the ride occur. So this is the section where you choose the future that you want, and then this is provided to you near the end of the ride on your screen that is just in front of you on the ride vehicle. And now I believe your future is just about ready. Let's take a look, shall we?
Welcome to the future. Or should I say, your future. Here in your future, getting away on vacation is a breeze. Your smart suitcase knows where you're going and what you need. And with solar power from your home fueling station, you're off. Don't worry about the house. A PDA with remote control can take care of anything you forgot. You'll leave your city home in an ultra-light, ultra-powerful, totally networked family car that can take you anywhere. You've already planned the trip with your virtual travel agent. Hotels, check. Restaurants, check. Guided tours, check. Getting there is half the fun, so your family car will be equipped with virtual tools to teach you about the world outside your window. You'll travel quickly and safely to places you can't imagine visiting today. And the moment you arrive at your ultimate vacation destination, you're out of this world and into the future. The end. Or should I say the beginning of your future.
So here's to the next 30,000 years on Spaceship Earth. While no one knows for sure what we'll see or do, I do know it will be quite an adventure.
Okay, and as we near the end of the ride here, as I mentioned earlier in some of my analysis of my footage, it's pretty clear that over time, as Disney's vision of the future at Epcot and specifically Future World and here at Spaceship Earth has become perhaps less and less realistic or possible, they've shifted the narrative. And you can also see this happening certainly at Disney parks in terms of Tomorrowland. And I find this literature on this topic to be interesting because the suggestion basically is that it was no longer possible to change the future or to impact the future in the way perhaps Disney, Walt Disney that is, originally intended in terms of the idea of Westcott and then Epcot. But perhaps then you can embrace a certain vision of the future. And so what you see, I think, here is this more playful Jetsonian type vision of the future, less of a focus on the idea of actually predicting and changing things, but more of the fun of the future. And thus, at the end of the ride, the guest gets that sense of this is what the future looks like in terms of, in my case, based on my limited options there. My future is based on the world of leisure and what that's going to look like for me. So again, I think it's a really interesting connection to think about here. The future as envisioned at Epcot, perhaps lack of ability to predict the future, or a lack of ability to impact the future in ways perhaps that were once intended by Walt Disney and others within his corporation. And so I think it offers us an interesting perspective here. It's still fun and engaging and entertaining. I still think it's a wonderful ride to be able to partake in, and it offers us an opportunity to think about some things. However, lacking in prediction allows us to think about some interesting aspects of the vision of the future. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed the video tour today here at Spaceship Earth at Epcot, and please come back for additional video features of the Immersive World Handbook.